Natalia. How are you?
Hello, Dora. Thanks so much for having me here. I'm good.
Thank you so much for coming. So where are you based exactly?
I'm based in London at the moment and for the foreseeable future.
Oh, nice. Perfect. So I brought you on the show because you have quite a remarkable career so far. You have been quite an exceptional student at university, and you're also a co-founder, and you have quite a big and nice and interesting journey in tech. So I thought it'd be a nice opportunity for you to come to the Verified Geek podcast and share your journey with us.
Thank you so
Um,
much for this introduction. It's very kind.
that's perfect. So tell me a bit about you. What did you study exactly, and how did you decide to work in tech?
Yeah, so my career has been quite short so far and very volatile. I actually started in politics. So in high school, I was literally taking history of arts, philosophy, ancient Greek, Latin. I did not have any scientific class, any STEM class at all. I actually stopped learning maths, I think at like 14. In France, you can choose quite early on to kind of separate from STEM, and that's what I did. And yes, in my mind, it was very crystal clear. I wanted to be in diplomacy. I wanted to be in the conversations for war and peace. Right now, when I look at what's happening in Afghanistan, for example, I remember why I was so geared towards international relations because the stakes are so high. It's the lives of people you're
Right.
talking about. And I wanted to have the biggest impact on the world that I could. And it seemed like a no-brainer that where you'd have the most impact is in situations of war and peace, where you have to be there and negotiate and try to get people out. So that's why I went to politics and international relations, and I joined the first program in Moscow of the program of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in Russia, in the school that it has. It was the first time that they opened their doors for a program made purely for foreign people, and we were
Right.
only 15. And I went there after high school, and it was a very, very eye-opening experience. I've learned so much there. Their program is really good, by the way. But the thing which I realized was that in those kind of negotiations, you are only, an employee of the state, and there's not much decisions you can take. And sometimes if you disagree with what's being decided, you actually have no voice. And so
Right.
I felt like I had been disillusioned. And, when you're a child and when you're an adolescent and when you're a teenager, you can be quite naive in how the world works. And I guess I learned it the hard way because now, as an adult, to me, it makes sense that, of course, diplomats can't just make their own decisions. Like, to me, that's crystal clear. Like, of course. But at the
Yeah.
time, I had this idealism that, people can step in and change the situation. I still went on to learn politics at the University of Edinburgh because, that had been my life goal. And I was very lost. I was there like, what do I do now? I'm very interested in studying politics. I'm very interested in this field. I just saw that, on the ground, it's not what I had expected. I had still, I had like an experience at the World Trade Organization for, yeah, it was international law for all like the rules of like how, the commerce should work between countries in Geneva. So it was
Mhm.
still like international government stuff, but it was also more on the private side because it was more commerce. And
Right.
again, I thought it was not as impactful as I had wished, as it is impactful as an organization, but as a single person, I was a bit lost. And
Right.
so I realized, okay, this is really not for me. All the stuff in international relations and whatever, I'm interested in it. I can't find a place for me. So I was very lost again. And someone told me, look, every ambitious people who don't know what they are doing, go to banking. So go to banking and figure it out. So I said, okay, fair enough. Okay, I had watched The Wolf of Wall Street, and it was the first time ever I had heard about equity, stock market, whatever. I had no idea this bubble existed at all. Like, at all. Like, I never invested in my life. My parents never invested in their lives. I don't think my parents know what equity means themselves, like stuff like that. So it was like a whole new world. And I was like, okay, that looks fun. Went there, ended up at Goldman Sachs in equity research. And again, same disillusion happened. I realized it looked fun in movies. It looked fun when you hear about it, but when you actually live it, it's not fun. And I did not enjoy it at all. I loved working with the people there because they were really smart and brilliant people and actually very kind. But the day-to-day work, I hated it and I did not find any meaning in it. And it was another dark period when I was there, like, again, I have to restart from scratch. I don't know what I want to do in my life. But funnily enough, it was actually at the internship where, because I was in eco to research, I was having to basically research the market and talk to people. And I was led to talk to a lot of people, especially engineers in blockchain at the time. It was like all the rage around it, whether we should invest in it or not. And especially, I was valuing banks. And of course, banks were at the time wondering whether how seriously they should take the switch to cryptocurrencies. So that's how I got to speak to so many founders and engineers to try to understand what was the whole thing about. When I talked to
Right.
them, they told me what they were doing during the day, like what code was. Again, I did not even know that JavaScript itself was a programming language. To me, JavaScript was like the logo that you see Java in very old desktop. I thought it was like a
Mm.
software for graphics. I was
Yeah.
so clueless, and so I learned a lot by talking to them, and I realized, hell, okay, maybe a third time, maybe the third time will be the right time, the right pick. Tech sounds cool and it sounds fun, and I want to be doing what they do all day long. Engineers were literally there, like I put my headphones on and I solve problems all day long, and it's
Nice.
intellectually challenging. And at the same time, when you code, you can have the impact that you want on the world because you can create so many things for so many different people you choose. And there are a lot of companies out there who solve problems in healthcare. There are companies that solve problems even in diplomacy. Like technologies is everything nowadays.
Yeah.
So they're like, okay, it looks like it's the intersection of everything I wanted, which is you can make it as impactful as you want as an individual, and all day long it's fun. I don't have to have spreadsheets which are boring and repetitive. I can solve problems like solving little puzzles. So I
Nice.
went on my coding journey. I learned how to code on my own. Obviously, I was still studying poetics at the University of Edinburgh. The nice thing about studying poetics for me was that I was naturally very good at writing essays, and I was really naturally good at going through at university without doing much to get very good grades. So that means that I had a lot of free time, and during
Yeah.
that free time I could literally teach myself, also get inside of the STEM community, like organize meetups, organize women in tech
Mm.
events and a conference. So I had the time to both socialize, go to hackathons to kind of get to understand how the tech world is. Like I wanted to see with whom I may be potentially working. Do I enjoy doing projects with those kind of people? That's really important, because in banking, for example, I actually liked the people. It was just the work. So
Mm.
I saw that I really got along with everyone in tech, really nice people, and yeah, I learned how to code on my own. And I did an app at a university, which was super complicated, really bad business idea. It was a disaster, but it was how I learned, how entrepreneurship really worked as well, which was really interesting. I
Mm-hmm.
had the idea of having a sort of Deliveroo, eBay, all mixed up with students, literally like helping students to find gigs and helping
Mm.
students to find, errand jobs which could pay well. So, for example, let's say I wanted someone to do my nails for a party. I would pay students to come to do it at my house in my room for £30, something like that. And it would be another student. And they would not need to be like a professional in that. They would just send me pictures. A lot of girls do that for themselves, like really
Right.
nice nails, but they don't earn money for it because they don't own a salon. They just do it for themselves. But they could actually be earning quite a lot if people were there like, you're not a professional, but I see your quality. I see you're doing it well. Can you please do it for
Mm.
me? Like stuff like that, basically. A bit like what Go Rabbit does, I think it's called nowadays. So there is someone out there who turned this idea into a reality in the US, but it was so complicated as a first business idea. I learned that I had to raise so much money for it, and I was there like, why? I'm just going to code it myself.
Yeah. Yeah.
Then I
A lot
started
of us
coding this
have this.
myself, and I was there like, okay, I understand now why you need to raise money. it's it's
So,
impossible
but
to do it alone.
let me stop you here because I have some questions on the way. So, at Goldman Sachs, you did an internship?
Yes, it was a
while
3
you
months
were studying?
internship at it was a summer internship when I was studying at the University of Edinburgh. It was
Right.
my
Okay.
my not my last year of university, it was the year before the last. So
Right.
perfect timing because I had like a whole year to figure myself
Mm,
out in tech before I left
right.
university, which is great because in Edinburgh it's 4 years
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
studies
Yeah. I know in
compared to
Scotland.
England.
So, and then when you had this idea of developing this application, you were actually still studying
Yes.
politics. All
Yes,
right,
I was
cool.
still
Okay.
studying politics. But again, politics it was a difficult course if you're not good at writing essays. But remember that I had dropped like learning maths when I was 14 to instead
Mm,
do philosophy and essays writing. Like, I in high school I had like 3 essays to write per week. So,
mm,
having a few essays per term to me was nothing. So I
yeah,
was able to do both at the same time actually very easily.
that's good because when I was a student, I definitely didn't spend my time like this. That's
Yeah.
very, it's like, it's amazing because when I was a student studying computer science, I didn't even know that I wanted to do
Mm,
that and be a coder or anything like that. I kind of find it along the way, but
interesting.
it's quite remarkable how you were basically looking to find your passion while studying something else. In your
Yeah, I
studies,
was studying my passion, to
yeah.
be fair. Like, I'm still very interested in international relations and politics. I'm very passionate about this, but and it was nice to have a moment in your life where you can just focus on studying something that you're super into, even if you know that
Mhm.
it's not something that will be, valuable in itself. It's kind of,
Yeah,
and but I've been fortunate as well to do that. Of course, in Edinburgh University, it was free for students who were from the European Union. So I felt like, if I was not studying something which is like, something super valuable in itself, like I was not, it was not this constant pressure of, oh my God, you have a degree, you have like the sunk cost of it, you have to do something in politics because you studied politics. It was more like, okay, I'm in Edinburgh, there's a huge opportunity, I'm just going to make the most of the campus, like,
yeah.
creating events, going to conferences, learning about myself, like finding out what I want. There was not this
Mm.
constant pressure, which was really helpful.
Mm. So during your studies, you were one of the most influential female students at the university. Uh, Tell me a bit about this experience.
Yeah, so again, I think that it was something that I was voted for, so it was like a voting sort of contest, and I think the reason why I got it is because I changed fields so much while
Mm.
I was at university, that at first I was in politics, so I was very very active in the political societies. I was
Right.
very active in the journal for the International Relations Academics Journal. I was very active in then when I went to banking inside of UTIC, which is one of the biggest societies in Europe for students, where they can invest money as students into this organization, which is really cool for learning how investing works in general and how investment banking world is. And and then when I realized I actually wanted to go into tech, then I started attending like hackathons, doing conferences around that. So I think
Right.
I had a lot of circles of friends within across the university, which were across disciplines, across schools. So I didn't just have like a set group of friends within my degree, which is what most people would have. I had a
Mm.
large number of friends across many different domains. And so I think when this contest came, it was not just my school or my degree voting for it. It was like all the people that I had been acquaintance with across societies and across courses that voted for me. And I think that's why it ended up being more numerous in terms of votes compared to other people.
So what was your first, moving on, finishing your studies, what was your first job title in the tech industry?
Engineering contractor, software engineering contractor. I
Right.
did a bootcamp after university. I did CodeWorks, which, by the way, I really recommend. I did a bootcamp to kind of, um, well, to get a sense of security. You know what I mean?
Mm. Yeah.
It's very difficult to get out there when you have absolutely no formal education in computer
Mm.
science. It's easier than other fields, but even in investment banking, like the people that I was working with, they had studied theology, they had studied a lot of other random degrees, which is not banking, and actually was better in investment banking if you're not coming from a degree that was management or business. So,
Right.
when people say, it's easier to find a job as a software engineer without a degree compared to other fields, I would say, no, that's not true. So, for example, even marketing people, you don't have to study marketing to be in marketing. Like all of the people who you see end up in marketing, a lot of them studied geosciences or, other stuff.
Yeah, I
In
agree.
computer science, it is true that it's possible to find a job without a degree, but I would still say that there is a clear advantage if you've studied
Yeah.
computer science, which makes sense. Um,
Mm.
and so having absolutely nothing when there are boot camps nowadays, which bring a lot of legitimacy to companies, but also other people in tech. To me, it was a no-brainer to go and do one, just for
Mm.
kind of peace of mind, and also obviously to learn as much as I can, and to check that my learning was on par with what was expected, for example, after a boot camp,
Yeah.
because everything is relative. And so yeah, I did the bootcamp, loved it. After I did take a few months to find my first gig. And to be fair, I had a lot of offers. I had a lot of companies wanting to hire me, even companies who proposed me to move me to San Francisco and stuff like that. Like, I would say the tech industry was very welcoming, and I did well in interviews. However, the thing for me is I really was valuing my freedom at the time. I was
Mm.
there like, I don't want to engage myself, sign contracts of 3 years, move countries already, and then realize, oh, I don't like it. I was a bit commitment shy, let's put it that way. I knew that what I
Mm.
wanted was technology, but I was not sure, which stack, which which part of technology. There are so many different ways of being a software
Yeah.
engineer. And I didn't want to clock myself out too soon. Also, I was not sure where I wanted to live. Like, there were so many like random variables everywhere. Looking for like, it was a no-brainer. And all of the offers which I received, it was there like, okay, it's a relief that I can find something. Now that I know that I can find something, I can kind of be picky and understand exactly the offer that I want. You see what I mean? Because
Yeah.
at first, the first time, and actually someone at Codeworks was really helpful for me. His name is Mark Azios. I had an offer at first and I really wanted to take it. And it was an offer which I had literally even before I graduated from the bootcamp. And the person at the bootcamp told me, look, right now it feels like the growl. It feels like you're desperate for an offer. But trust me, like, offers will come. Don't say yes to the first opportunity you see. He said, like, trust me, it will come more. Like, don't be desperate. He was like, wait and see all the different things you can do. He was like, having a job is not like a light decision. You have to take it very seriously, and you can't be desperate for that. I was like, okay. And that was really helpful because, I really wanted to say yes to that first job offer, which was not very, it was not very good. It was literally like being an intern, not a proper software engineer, more like an intern at a
Mm.
small startup, which I did not feel much care for. But I was like, oh my God, it's something. Someone wants me in tech. And, I said no at the end, and that was the best decision. And and so yeah, again, and I was there like, okay, I'd like to have a contractor role for now. The reason why is, one, you kind of choose the projects that you work on, and that was important for me. I wanted to make sure that I was very intentional with what I was working on. Two, you choose the stack. You can choose, which stack you prefer. And I wanted to
Yeah.
learn a lot as well. So you can have a mix between challenging yourself by adding more stuff into the stack, which excites you, but also keeping it safe when you have to do something like, quickly with a stack that you're comfortable with. So it was kind of safe in that environment. But also, the thing is, I also wanted to be mentored, and it's difficult to be mentored when you have a contract, which was
Mm.
the big minus. I was there like, the problem with being a contractor is I'm not being managed by someone who teaches me what I'm doing wrong, obviously.
Mm.
So that's why usually you do contracts when you're a bit more confirmed, because then you know what you're doing, and
Yeah.
you don't need to have someone supervising you. So I was like, okay, ideal scenario is finding a contract role where you are working with someone who mentors you. I don't know whether that exists or not, but this is, I was basically laying out all of my needs and trying to see whether there would be an opportunity that fits them the most. Another reason why I wanted to be a contractor and not an employee was because I knew 100% that one of the reasons why I came into tech was to found my own company and to do my own startup. And I knew that
Mm.
by signing up as an employee for 3 years, for example, you would not have this flexibility, and you'd be stuck in a role where perhaps the growth is a bit limited. You learn how to do one very specific part of the stack or one specific part an application, especially in big companies, but you don't learn how to build a product from the ground and how to grow it. And how to scale it, how to write code from scratch, which is scalable, and how to train people. Like, you learn these things eventually in big companies, but it takes way longer. Whereas as a contractor, you are 100% owner of the project, and also it gives you this flexibility to be there. Like, I don't have a contract. If next week I found a co-founder and we want to do something, we'll just do it.
But so that brings me. Go on. Tell me.
Go ahead.
That brings me to a question, like, do you prefer contracting as a software engineer or a permanent job?
Well, I have never had a permanent job in software engineering.
Okay.
I only did contracting, and I did my own company, which was the whole plan. And this is also one of my advice to people is if you want something, you have to be strategic about what you're doing. Like, hearing people say, I'm hearing so many of my friends or people say, I want to do a startup, but they don't align their lives in order to make it happen. You know what I mean? They say they want to do it, but they don't put themselves in the situation where it's likely to happen. Let's put it that way. And you have to sit down, write your goals, write everything that could lead to it, everything that would mean that it would be difficult to get there. And then you have to, think twice before you make a decision in life in general. That's to any part of life, but especially your career, because there's so many possible opportunities, And so
true.
I don't know. I've never worked as an employee, even at our startup. Like, I'm not just doing software engineering, doing a bit of everything, and I'm talking with the marketing people all the time. I'm also trying to understand what we're going to build next, how the features should look. I'm doing the design at the same time, the product at the same time, a bit of everything. So it's very different than how it would be if I were just purely a software engineer working somewhere. Like, it's
of course.
the same experience. So to answer your question, I don't know.
Yeah. Are you also, as a co-founder, are you also involved in the hiring process?
Yeah, of course, 100%. Yes, hiring was very interesting because it's very interesting when you're on the other side. And honestly, I understand why I had a lot of offers, even if I didn't even finish the bootcamp. I think that I received a lot of offers where there's no indication about the people. Very few sent cover letters, and very few sent a CV which put their strength, in the forefront. I would interview people even if there was not much there, because I could sense that there was something else. You can sense. And I was asking them questions, and they were formidable. They were great people, and I was there like, they're great people. They've done so many great things. How come it's not something that they put forward in their CV or putting forward in their application? Because I really, had to dig them up to kind of find all the treasures. And so, the advice to people who are listening and who would like to find their first job in the industry really is show enthusiasm, show that you're willing to learn, show that you're willing to be mentored, do contact co-founders themselves. And I promise you that at some point someone will answer you. And you have to put yourself out there.
Yeah, that's very, very interesting and very true. I agree with that. So let's talk about Custodian, the company that you're a co-founder for, right? What is Custodian? What do they do? And what are your responsibilities in the company?
Okay, cool. So, well, the way that I co-founded Custodian, because a lot of that is part of that, is I actually eventually founded my mentor for a contracting role, which is called Jeremy Hindle. I contacted him via LinkedIn. I had made a list of people that I wanted to contact because they would be the ideal people to work with. And Jeremy was the ideal kind of person to work with because he was basically in social entrepreneurship, but also he was a self-taught technologist, very successful. He's done really impressive stuff. And he changed his mind many times. He worked for real estate, and he worked in neuroscience, then he worked in tech. And I was there like, okay, if I reach out to these kind of people for contracting roles and, collaboration, they will understand where I'm coming from because they've been through it as well. It would be very different if I had reached out to someone who studied computer science at a university, never changed their field and stayed in there, because I think they would have seen me as unstable, which I understand the sentiment. You need to find someone with whom you resonate.
Yeah.
And so I reached out to Jeremy. Jeremy was literally there, like, yeah, sure, like there is this contracting role that I don't have the time to do, which is around, a TKS, the oldest company in the UK. And he was there like, you can do, you can take that contract because I don't have the time to do it. And, I can help you out whenever you're stuck. So that was really helpful. And we worked on that for like around a year. Jamie was doing, something else full time. He was just exiting his last company, Head Start, which went through YC. He also had just won Forbes Under 30, that kind of stuff. So he was kind of taking a break after having worked so hard for so many years. So it was a very lucky timing, because at the end of my contract, one of his best friends from school reached out to him and said, hey, I have an idea. I want to make this a company. Would you be my co-founder? And Jamie was there like, I'm trying to get an incubator off the ground at the same time. So I can't be just me, your co-founder. He's like, I need to bring someone else as a co-founder to kind of co-share the responsibilities in technology. So he brought me in, and he was like, hey, Nat, I'm doing this incubator. I don't have the time to be completely like, full-time on Custodian as a co-founder, but he was like, I can be the CTO and like decide of the technology stack, etc. You can be on the ground, managing everything and the product as well and stuff like that. And with Charles, so 3 co-founders, and I was there like, that sounds good to me. So I chose, the company was made more because the team makes sense rather than the business idea in itself. We kind of created the business idea afterwards. We saw that we had the correct team. We saw that we had, the correct relationships, that everything was very smooth. We worked very well all together. And then we were like, okay, what do we do? So Charles is, historic racer. He loves cars. He's passionate about the automotive industry. He has all the contacts there and is, very, very, very knowledgeable. He's literally is like dictionary for everything in car related world. And so initially he had reached out to Jeremy, being there like, there is a need to disrupt this industry because everything is done on paper, by phone calls. It's a huge mess. And there's so much to be done technologically wise on this industry. And so he wanted at the start to build a sort of social network, like Instagram for cars. He was there like, I don't want to be on Instagram all the time because 1, privacy, 2, it's difficult to find people who are exactly in the same mindset as you. He was like a club, but like online. So that was the first idea, which is very different from what we have now. So then I came in with Jeremy, and and we decided to start from scratch. We were like, okay, we have you, Charles, who is in the automotive world. We have Jeremy and Nathalia for like best product design and tech. Okay, what do we do? And we looked at all of the different processes that were there to own a car. And we sat down with Charles, and Charles went through all of the paperwork that he had to do to insure his car, or to manage his tasks, to digitalize his history. Because if he loses the documents of his car, all of the car loses its value. So, and if he chooses the wrong service provider, his car could lose all of its value or multiply by 10. Like, like investing in cars is very interesting. It's a bit like investing in a painting in a lot of ways, but it's actually way more difficult than paintings, because you also have to maintain it. Whereas paintings, you still have to maintain some stuff, but it's not comparable to a car when it breaks down on the road. Like it's not straightforward at all. And there is no technology behind this world at all. So we were like, okay, well, let's make it our mission. Let's make it our mission to make ownership easy. We're going to provide a platform where it helps car owners. Whatever happens, we can recommend them the best for service providers, given their specific vehicle. We can eventually offer, valuation tools. We can eventually do so many different things, and we start simple. We'll start with, managing your day-to-day tasks, managing, with your reminders, digitalizing your document history, all this stuff, which are actually very, very handy. And, that we can start with. We don't need to start like, a marketplace and stuff like that. We get people in, we get people interested in our proposition. And on the long term, we can literally roll out many, many different features. So that was the plan, and that is still the plan. And so my responsibilities, in startups, they change. In startups, you don't have like a set responsibility. I do a bit of everything, like I've every week is different. Overall, like I'm 100% hands-on, the code of the front end. I've 100% done that. And also, like, at the start, I was doing all the design for the platform, like the desktop, the mobile. I've done all the design myself. And then over time, I kind of switched. I was there like, okay, Jeremy, can you please take on a bit more of the design work? And then I can focus on the back end. And then I was focusing on the back end more recently. Jeremy has been taking more design work. And so, hiring as well, doing also like understanding, what marketing campaigns we do, like, basically a bit of everything. Responsibility wise, I would say front end, in terms of responsibility. At the end of the day, if something breaks with the platform, it's my responsibility, on the front end side.
That's very interesting. I want to kind of learn, and obviously you can share it if you want. What kind of technologies do you use for Custodian? Because I really love the idea of digitalizing all your the paperwork that's there. So what kind of technologies do you use to do that?
So actually the interesting technologies is more around valuations as well, like where are you going to, and we have been very ambitious with Custodian in the sense that we consider ourselves, we are a technology first company. Our IP is in the tech. Okay, our IP is not in the business idea. A lot of people can do what we do. The IP really is the tech. And so Jeremy, he's really talented at picking the right tool right at the right time. Even if sometimes it's a bit too early, at the end of the day, it's perfect, because then you're seen as a thought leader in that field. And so on the back end, we have Golang. Obviously, Golang at the time, it was 2 years ago, Golang was not as hot as it is now. Jeremy has been starting working in Golang for 4 years. It's way more performant than Node. It's so much more scalable than JavaScript. I can't imagine having JavaScript on the back end. I would be nervous working. I would be very nervous. And
so what language do you use for
Golang on the back end?
Golang. Okay, yeah.
And it's very, very scalable. It's perfect. It's what big companies use, like Google, obviously, which created Golang. But it makes sense for a startup as well, because you basically have the best engineers, because people who are coding in Golang, really, like, it teaches you so much good stuff. It teaches you so many different concepts, which make you a really good engineer. So coding in Golang makes you think in such a clean, nice way. You can focus on the logic, and that's how you can become a really good engineer, because you have the space to think for the logic. It's a very pure language. It's great. And then for the database, which was honestly, I think, a great move, but it was very difficult, especially for Jeremy, who was in charge of it. dgraph is a new database which has been created only a few years ago by Manish, who was basically, when you type on Google and you have highlighted answers and questions, like those things, these answers and these questions, basically, what are they? You make a research, and Google is like, okay, I know that based on this research, there will be a bunch of questions which relate to that, and the person is likely to actually try to get to know this. So Google is trying to get even smarter than you, and is like, actually, what you're trying to look for is this. Am I correct?
Yeah.
So that is what Manish created when he was at Google, and he left Google to focus 100% on that, and that is called dgraph. And dgraph is a graph database, as the name says, which is ultra performant. Like, I've never seen this. Like, you can see the graphs that we make, and like we have like thousands, like hundreds of thousands of nodes coming up in like microseconds. It's crazy fast. It's so well architectured. It's amazing. The downside of that is that because it's very new, there is no
documentation.
At the start, there was no community. You don't have an answer on Stack Overflow. You just don't.
Yeah. That's usually the problem with new technologies, but eventually they get there. Yeah.
Eventually, but then that also means that we have a competitive advantage, because when you have all the people who try in the field to value things so difficult to value, like cars, like, to put things into context, if your car has been photographed by a photographer who was a big deal in the 60s at a car event, just that random stuff can change the value of your car. So imagine all the thousands of things that are attached to a car or to any collectible object. Like, impossible to have that in a SQL database. You just can't make the connection. No, it's even with NeoGraph, the other graph databases that we looked at, there's a maximum of nodes that you can go deep. On the graph, there's no limits. Basically, it's so good. And so it's a great competitive advantage because what we can provide on the long term will beat whatever else the other people are using when they're using a database, which make it so easy. So it is worth, and the fact that it's so new and the fact that not a lot of people use it really means that we are pioneers in the field, really. And it's really exciting. Like Jeremy's in touch with the founding members of dgraph, and myself, for example, I'm doing a workshop on dgraph at the Women in Tech series in November.
Nice.
So you kind of, when you pick a technology at the start when it's getting hot, if you're the early adopter and you're successful at it, one, it's very easy to hire because you're one of the lead thought leaders in the field, and so therefore it attracts a lot of great engineers to want to work with you. And two, it just makes you such a better engineer because you don't have the answers given to you. You have to figure stuff out.
True, you have
and
to
for
figure it out,
yourself, in terms of the everyday hustle, it feels great. It's very satisfactory.
And the front end?
The front end is React with TypeScript. Right. React, TypeScript, Redux, stuff like that. Using just JavaScript would, again, make me too nervous. There's so many things that could break, and I can't think of it. It's not very scalable. But on the front end, you don't want to not use something like JavaScript, obviously. I mean, there is stuff like Flutter and whatever. It's even more early than dgraph Flutter on the web. It's getting there, but it's going to take time. And it's a kind of a no-brainer as well to hire, and also like speed of development. But then using TypeScript with React, you basically remove the problems of JavaScript. You keep exactly the same as it is, you just remove the problems, and then with TypeScript you have all the safety, all of the ways to make it scalable, all of the ways to make the architecture make sense, and easily testable and stuff like that. So it was a really good choice. And I'm using the methodology which Jeremy had advised me to look into, which is atomic design. Atomic design is basically, I made so many talks about this. My talk in the TypeScript conference is coming soon as well. It's a really nice way of doing the architecture of your apps. I would definitely encourage you to look into this as well. Atomic design.
Nice. And the mobile version of it is in React Native?
So we are doing a PWA, a progressive web app.
Okay. Yeah, of course.
So what progressive web app is basically is you can install it on your phone. You just don't have to go through, the Apple Store or the other stuff. And we may, in the future, we may switch to not switch. We have to keep, of course, our web infrastructure. In the future, I think we'll also do the native version. But for people who manage their cars, it's important to have a desktop application because you need to drag on so many files and stuff like that.
I agree.
Dealers, for example, when dealers work on their desktop. They don't want to work with their clients on the phone, when you have so many things to upload, usually you use your computer. So there were a lot of reasons why it would make sense to start with a desktop and mobile app, and then just focus on the mobile when the time comes.
Yeah, I agree with that. I used to work in a company making games, and we did the same thing. We were basically focused on the desktop version, and it was a PWA. And I always say to people that get obsessed with owning an app is that just make sure sometimes your idea makes more sense to be on desktop, like pay attention or on desktop more than the app. And then sometimes there are other times where it makes more sense to be an app more than a desktop, an app on the phone more than and it's all because of the fact that people these days are obsessed with owning an app. Like a friend of mine, he wants to create this pizza community, a community about pizza, basically, Italian, obviously. And I said to him, he wants to create an app early at this stage, although he does have the desktop version. Obviously, to create an app on the phone is a lot more difficult. So I said to him, just make sure you build your community first. You have something to work with, and then I'll help you create the app, or maybe then you will have the money as well to create the app, but it's way too early in the process.
And also, when you have to make updates to the app, like if it is on an app store or whatever, like you have a whole process. You can't just push the code and it updates. Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
you know, and let's say that you have a bug that you haven't seen, and that happens 100% when you launch a product. Like 100% you will have bugs, you will have people tell you
Yeah.
something does not work or something is wrong, or they don't like this and you have to change it ASAP. And then you have the bad reviews. And then
Yeah.
people vote you down. And then to get
Exactly.
to
Yeah.
the update is a hell on earth. Like, it's not iterative enough. I think it's much better to, as you say, build the community first, have the prototype and everything working like on desktop, have people liking your product, iterate, try to understand why they like, what they don't like. And I think the mobile app really should be, if even it needs to be, it should be at the end with finalized version, which you're certain is like, you know, this one you're going for. So even myself, like last week I had to push so many changes in, for example, small stuff, like for example, people couldn't find a way to update their bio because there was like the edit button which was like the far left. So I was like,
Mm.
okay, let's make everything clickable. So like if you click on no bio, it's clickable, and of course you can edit it.
Yeah.
Small stuff like that. Like I changed it in like what, 10 minutes, pushed it, and it was there. If there was a mobile
Yeah.
app, doing those things, those sort of changes every day is just not, no, it's
Mm.
difficult.
I find it very interesting that you said it's quite remarkable, to just go from a bootcamp to a, being a co-founder and doing the design, the front end and the back end. It's not a lot of people can do that.
It's a lot of
So
work.
yeah, I
I put
know.
my social life out of there. I don't have a social
Yeah.
life, let's put it that way.
Yeah. So
It's
the
I lost all of my
design,
university friends. Like
yeah,
I don't have the time to socialize. Now I have a bit more time because I finally, I'm in a place where we raise money, we are, you know, we are hiring. I kind of have a bit more on my plate, and I have also slightly
mm,
less to learn because, like, you know, after the huge climb when you start in tech, you know, you still have to learn, but like it's
always,
nowhere as disorienting as when you first start. And so
mm,
now it's a bit better, but you know, it is definitely like all of my weekends I had worked, all of my evenings I had worked. Again, I lost all my university friends, you know, which, you know, they continued on, you know, a mix between university life and employee life, when you kind of,
yeah,
you go to the pub after work and you go, you know, and you go and have dinner parties and all day long stuff during the
yeah,
weekend. I
yeah,
was
yeah,
not taking part of any of this.
yeah,
So do I advise people to do the same? I don't know. I think, you know, before you want to have, you know, high goals for your career, you have to make sure that this is actually what you want,
yeah,
because there are a lot of sacrifices on the way. Sometimes it's worth it. For me, it's worth it because I really love what I do, and to me it makes sense to put all my effort in my career because I'm spending like 8 hours a day on it minimum.
yeah,
And so it's not a small thing. But for a
yeah,
lot of
yeah,
people, they are fine with spending 8 hours a day where they like what they're doing, they don't really want it to the next level because it means that they can have like a lot of other stuff in their life, like social life and friends and events and stuff like that. So definitely, I don't want to be there like, oh, that's what you have to do, because you definitely do have sacrifices that you have to account for.
yeah. I agree with you. Um, so the design, the UX UI design, because you said you learned how to code on your own and through the bootcamp, but how did you learn how to do a proper good UI UX for the custodian?
By trial and error, you know, I spent so much time learning design, so much time. It was so painful. I was really
Yeah.
bad at it at first. I remember how the first design which I made were when I was at university for this app which I mentioned, and I was so exuberant because I'm an artist on the side. Like I do digital art, but also like physical art, and so that helps in the sense that it does give you this aesthetic sense. You
Mm,
see when something looks ugly and when something looks good, and you care about making it look good, which is
yeah.
what's most important in UI. I have a lot of friends in computer science. They make apps which look so bad, but they don't put care in it. They, to them, it's a chore and not something
Yeah.
that's enjoyable to make, you know, a design that looks nice and you can see it. So, you know, you have to be willing to spend hours and hours and hours just on one button to make it look credible. If you
Yeah, I
don't
agree.
have the patience and the care and love, you just won't get there. You'll give up.
Yeah,
So
that's my problem. I don't
yeah,
have that much love with
yeah,
UI, UX, and I go and just straight to the code. And also,
yeah,
my problem was that I was the person, like you said, working and going to the pub. Because when you're in your early 20s, you have just graduated, you get your first job, but you kind of like continue the university life. And that's probably why I am not a co-founder now. But yeah,
yeah,
well done for doing all of this. I really like your views on technologies from what you've been telling me. So you've used React Native and Flutter and Angular. What's your preferred choice of
yeah.
building across platform apps?
Um, I personally hated React Native.
Yeah.
Sorry. um, I again, I think it's also because I usually try to make those apps in my side projects, and I had very very ambitious ideas how it should look, and I was not
Mm,
worried about the functionality of it and whatever. You can have a look at my website. It's not very functional, but it's beautiful, and I wanted to make it look like a unique experience. And so I have very specific niche things to implement on my projects for mobile design. And
yeah.
with React Native, it was forcing me to have very boring stuff which looked kind of dry and not very
Yeah.
interesting. And I was there like, okay, well, I can't really go far with this. That was my only problem with React Native. It was that if you wanted to be ambitious with the UI and the UX, it was you had so much workarounds, and it was not encouraging you to do something cool. It was, and it kind of removes the fun. It's very dry. Um, the thing which blew my mind really was Flutter. I loved Flutter so much. Just the developer experience is much better. Like, the debugging
Mm,
and everything, it's so much easier to once you set it up, it's super easy. And it has so much very nice like based UI stuff when you can do the transitions, whatever, without CSS, it does it for you. Like you don't have to worry about making it look like a credible app. With React Native, the problem which I had with that is that it doesn't look like a native app. It doesn't feel native. And to make it feel native and to make it look credible, it's so there's so many little different small things that you have to
yeah.
make work, and it becomes tiring because it's not a question of logic, it's a question of trying to make something work when they make it more complicated for you. I understand why it's been made like this, but still. Whereas Flutter, it looks like Flutter, even if I have no code on it, the app which I have looks majestic. It looks credible. The animations, the web pages, the navigations, like everything just make it look like effortlessly native,
Yeah.
which feels amazing. And of course, Flutter is nice as well, as nice as React Native for the fact that it's both for Android and iOS at the same time, for those who listen who don't know. Yeah, it's and
Yeah.
also Flutter is going to get on the web as well eventually. I'm looking forward to that. I studied the black block pattern, which is how you get with the data, and that was very interesting. Dart, the language, is really cool. I love it. I love more object oriented languages, but like not object oriented but more like type safety stuff. It's really nice as well. um Again, I think the only reason why Flutter hasn't taken off that much is purely because of Dart, because people are there like, oh, it's a new language. But actually, if they looked into Dart, it's very easy to pick up.
Mm-hmm.
There are a lot of very nice IntelliSense in the VS Code stuff. It's very nice to work with. I would say it's actually easier than JavaScript. So I hope that it's going to take off to the extent that React Native has. I think it has. I don't know. I looked into Stack Overflow stats and it was not looking too bad. But still,
Mm.
I see a lot of offers around for React Native and not Flutter. I see more offers for Flutters for contractors and not, for employee stuff. And I think that's also why people are a bit there like, if I learn React Native, I'm going to get a job like 100%. With Flutter, I may not. And that's why they don't
Yeah.
learn it as well. So I hope that people who hire hear me out. Flutter
Yeah.
is a good idea for your organization.
Yeah. 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 That's very interesting. Yeah. Very, very nice point of view.
Oh, and
Um,
just Angular versus
yeah.
React very quickly, because you did ask me this
Yeah.
question.
Yeah.
I think React with TypeScript makes a lot of sense, because the thing which I loved about Angular was the safety with TypeScript. And I'm at bootcamp. The founder of the bootcamp said, "Look, if I have a startup, if I have to employ, hire like a rock star engineer," he said, If it's a beginner, I would ask them to do it in Angular. If it's not a beginner, they can do it in React. It's easier, it's more
Yeah.
flexible, you can do things how you want. And I agree with that. And I think if you use React with TypeScript, you basically, remove kind of the need for something like Angular in a way, because then you have all the
Yeah.
benefits without the problems. So definitely my answer to that is React with TypeScript, and then you don't need something like Angular.
Yeah. I totally agree with you. And then with React, it's like, just like you said, people think, oh, it's just easy. Let's just make everything in React and use junior programmers to do everything in React. But I disagree with that, because it's not. There's a lot of best practices that you need to learn. There's a lot to learn. You actually have to have good experience in React in
Yeah,
order
it's
to.
it's easy to make like a prototype for something where you don't have accounts, you don't have like important like complicated data coming in, and you don't have, the difference between a prototype and a proper platform is enormous. There's a reason why why companies need to raise millions to build a product when
Yeah.
people can do a prototype in 2 days. There is a reason for that. There's a reason why.
Yeah,
So
I
yeah.
totally agree. What's the future of Custodian, do you think?
Look, I'm very excited about where we're going. I think we're going to definitely get, um, beyond cars. I think we have collectible assets as a whole planned, because the problems between owning a car, owning a yacht, owning a musical instrument, like all of the same. The collectible world is kind of not very visited by technology. Let's be that way. However, car first makes sense as a first kind of beachheading strategy, because, well, Charles's connections and network and also experience as a car owner, and also because you need to start somewhere, win a market, and then you can expand. And we could either decide that we made it big in cars and we decide to go for the US, or like expand
Right.
geographically, or we can decide, okay, well, let's expand in terms of, let's stay in the UK and do all of the collectible assets and then expand. There are different ways that we could do it, but the thing with startups is, I think it's important to have a long-term vision. I think what the long-term vision needs to make sure just is that you do have a long-term vision. One, you can have multiple long-term visions. That's fine, as long as they are all aligned with what you're doing now and it makes sense. And you do need to have a long-term vision where you can show to VC, this is a $1 billion company business. This is a $1 billion company.
Yeah.
Like, if you have this argument and if you have this vision, then you're good to go. And we don't have just one vision for the $1 billion company idea. We have multiple visions, and all of them are possible given our current product. It's just a question of which one will we decide to go for given our users' preferences. So if we see that we have captured the car market, and it's going very well, and they're like, yeah, please go to the US or whatever, then we'll go for that. If we see that those people, they're like, hey, can I also put on the platform my watches, which I've a collection of cars, but also have those yacht, I have those watch, I have this wine, like, is there a way for me to manage it as well like this, because this is really nice for my car, but I'd like to be able to do that for the whole bundle of my collections. So depending on what the users will ask us for and where we see the traction is, we'll basically, not pivot because we have nothing to change. We'll basically go towards that route.
Yeah, that's very, very good. Um, are you back in the office in Custodian, or are you working from home?
Okay, so we are working from home. So, you know, we had an office
Mm.
before the pandemic, of course, and it was great. However, I realized I prefer working remotely for many reasons. One, hiring is better. I don't want to
Hmm.
hire just engineers who are working in London near my office. I've hired people who are, one is in Spain, one is in Los Angeles, the other is in Romania at the moment. She's living in London still, but she
And
travels
that was
back and
during the
forth between.
pandemic.
That was during the pandemic,
Oh,
yes.
wow.
And we have really good experience with this. We have onboarded people in a remote way very well, because Jeremy Hindle, co-founder, has done remote working way before the pandemic with Head Start. He was one of the first people to go remote. Uh, but like, usually I'm speaking 4 years before the pandemic started. So he had complete experience over how to handle all the logistics. and all the hiring process and how to make sure that people communicate the right way, etc. And using Discord, and that's something that's in the advantage of small companies, because I know that for security you can't use something like Discord in big companies, but we are using Discord and it feels so nice because you have different channels, you have different rooms. It feels like an office, honestly. And the very funny thing is that I spoke to hired employees remotely, like on a day-to-day basis, to the point where it was very strange. I finally understood how you can actually create friendship just digitally. I never believed in it before, but I could actually joke with them, like talk to them as if we were in a almost at a pub, and I did not even meet them physically. And then we organized an event where I met some of the people physically for the first time, and they were exactly like I had pictured them.
Yeah. That's crazy. Yeah.
And I was like,
I know what you
I never
mean.
met you and I knew you. So you can definitely bond digitally if you have the right logistics and the right
Yeah.
management. You can definitely do it. And then you create real life events when you can actually bond. For example, we organized go-karting, and then we're organizing like, we're probably going to on a boat together. And then we can actually create friendships digitally.
Mm. Sorry, I think I lost you for a second.
I lost you for a second as well. I'm not sure what happened. I guess it was
Yeah.
just Zoom. Sorry.
Yeah, it's probably my
Yeah. So
connection as well.
yeah,
You said you were
I
going
don't
on a
think we
boat trip.
yes. Well, Charles co-owns a boat in south of England, so we may all just go there and meet each other. Guillaume is moving to London. He's from Barcelona. He's moving to London for a few months. So I think when companies say that they don't want remote working because they can't create relationships between people, I think it's just because they're not doing it right. Because it's definitely possible.
Yeah, yeah. I completely agree. Well done for doing this. I am pro going back to the office, but that's
Okay.
mostly because I'm bored working
Okay.
from home.
Well,
But
something also to add with remote working is that it should be a choice. One, like if big companies, I think if they can afford both office and remote, I think it's great to
yeah,
offer the choice to people. And but also something which is worth saying is Andra, a software engineer, which we recruited literally 3 months ago, she's a mother of two, and for
oh
her,
yeah,
remote work made a whole difference in her career. Like
yeah, I
you
agree.
can't imagine. She's like for example, her children were in holiday, the summer holidays. She said it's amazing that like I don't have to stress over what am I doing with them. Like I'm at home, they are here, I know they're safe, they are young, so they can't be left alone. And she's
Mm,
like, it's so nice to know that if one has a problem, he's here, I can see. And it's rather than being called by someone, hey, your child has a problem, go to the doctor, you don't know what's happening. Like, having all this peace of mind, and also obviously like all the logistics behind. And and I was wondering, and I was there like, how would she have done during the summer holidays if she had to be in the office every like all day long? Her husband has to be in the office as well. And
yeah,
I think having the opportunity for remote working, I think is going to be such a game changer for women who wants to start families, because the whole logistical nightmare and the whole pressure that it's you to have to take the day off work and not your husband or whatever, like all of this thing kind of goes out of the window if both people work remotely. This is where you can have true equality and make things so easier. So yeah.
yeah. You also have a very successful Instagram account, which is really hard to make. And I find it amazing how you're a co-founder and you also can invest some time in social media. So how often do you post and how much
Yeah.
time do you invest in it?
Yeah. So you say it's very successful. I don't think it's very successful in the sense that
Yeah,
if
to
I were
be it
posting
is.
every day, I think I could have had like, over 100K people. But
Mm.
because I don't spend much time on it, that's why. I think the reason why I have so much followers is because I had a lot of time at university when I had started it. And I think I created a
Okay.
sort of initial relationship with a lot of people who know me from back then. I had my first 10K followers within 3 months of creating the account when I was at university. And it's been 4 years now. And in 4 years, I only doubled, up to 20K. So if you compare 3 months to 4 years, I have not
Yeah.
made any kind of progress regarding this, and that's
Right.
fine. I know for sure that if I wanted to get, to influencer level and get over 100K, like I've seen it happen to a lot of other accounts, and it's about consistency, posting every day, videos are preferred, like all this kind of stuff. But
Yeah.
as you say, I don't have the time, and it's not a priority for me. I think what's my priority is to keep this account alive, because I have it and I like to share about my things, but I never see Jager's Code as a chore or as work, because
Yeah.
I never took, for example, time off on the weekends to create content or whatever. Like I actually create content at lunch when I have 20 minutes. I just take a pic of myself, and the content is nothing that I have to search or I have to craft. The content is always, what have I been up to this week? And usually, because I'm in a startup, there's always something to share on,
Yeah.
how I do my product, on, how I organize my issues on GitHub, how I communicate with other developers who I'm doing design, the architecture choices that I'm making, those things. Because I'm doing so much, it's very easy to create content in 10 minutes, because I'm just going to write about what was on my mind literally today. So definitely something where I'm not spending any time on it. Actually, like I'm only posting like once every week, sometimes every 2 weeks, and usually
Mm.
to make a post it takes me like 20 minutes.
Yeah.
I would say, sometimes I'm wondering, I'm like, should I take some more time and grow it is even more? But then that means I wouldn't have time to do my art, for example. I like to do my digital
Mm.
art like whenever I have free time, like on the evenings and on the weekends. And I'd
What's
rather
the
not
digital
trade
art
it.
that you do? Do you do it by coding?
No, so it's digital art. So it's I'm just making art basically. I'm making illustrations. I like to make stuff. I like to open perhaps a shop like where I can like deliver like the frames for flat decorations. Like I'm an artist, so I like to paint. I like to draw. And right now I'm seeing like, okay, I could either grow Jager's Code on the evenings, or I could
Yeah.
make art. And I'm already building something with my company. I'm already creating something off the ground. I'm already building something which is my own. So I don't have this. If I were a full-time employee, I think I would have needed to have something of my own on the side. So I think I definitely would
Yeah.
have doubled down on Jager's Code. But because I'm doing my own startup on the day, on the evenings, I'm like, you know what, this is my me time. I'm going to prioritize whatever hobby I want to do rather than a social media account. And that does
Yeah.
not mean that I don't value Jager's Code. Like I really do value it, but it's not something which I want to see as a work project. It's something which I want
Yeah.
to see as something which I share to my audience when I can, when
Yeah.
I want. And if it's helpful to them, that's great. If it's not, I want to have this as my space.
It's amazing how you say you're an artist because, many people have this idea of programmers just sitting in a basement coding all day, doing nothing else. Um, but it's most of them that because I in my career I've known so many of them. Most of them actually do have hobbies that are related to art,
Yeah, yeah,
mostly
100%.
music. Like you said, it's
Music
it's
as well. A lot of
it's
programmers or musicians.
yeah, exactly,
Makes a lot of
exactly.
sense, to be fair.
Yeah, it
when you
does. It does.
know when you know about programmers, it makes sense. But from the external world, it's like, really?
Yeah, yeah. The people outside this community don't really understand this, and
Yeah.
it's great for my listeners to know that you're also a really really good artist. So, what's
Well,
your yeah?
I
Go
think the
on.
reason why as well is because programmers usually are introverts, because if it's not introverts, you're used to doing something which only requires your own presence. So when you
Yeah,
code, for example, you code on your own. When you do music, you kind of are in your own world, in your own focus.
that's true.
It's where you recharge your batteries. Like after coding, I don't have the energy to go to a pub, but I would have the energy to stay in my room and do cool music. And I think there's that. And also it's creative. Like coding is super creative. Like you create, you build all day, you think all day. And what art is the same. It's You have tools, and many artists nowadays use technological tools. For example, musicians will use software music, you know uh, or artists would use
True.
something like like Photoshop, or making digital art, this kind of stuff. It's also very technical. Even just artists, for example, even if it's just on paper, you need to understand the proportions of the body, perspective, and all of this stuff is
Mathematical. Yeah.
it is. And music as
Yeah.
well, understanding the harmonies and stuff like that, that's also very
True.
mathematical. And so it makes so much sense from like a technological perspective, from people who are in the tech world, it makes sense that other programmers are really into art and do music and do this kind of stuff, because we understand how it works and it's exactly the same working. And to people who are not from the tech world, they don't see programmers as creatives because they don't know that coding is creative. They think coding is just a bunch of maths, but it's the creative part of math is, you have an exercise which doesn't have a set answer. You have to do whatever you want, and you look at the documentation and you figure it out.
Yeah. Nice, very interesting. What was my last question, because you've achieved so much at such a young age, would be like, what's your advice for someone that wants to start their career in tech and potentially become a founder as well?
Yes, I would say that it is up to you to understand your goals and make everything in your life aligned to make that happen. And so, for example, understanding the difference between contractor and employee, remote, non-remote, whether you want to be mentored, whether you don't need to be mentored at the moment. If you do need to be mentored, you need to understand what are the ways that I can get a mentor, and there's more than one. Like being very strategic and thinking a lot. And the advice that I give to people, even not just coders, but anyone who wants to create a startup or do anything in their life, I'm always saying, always have a long-term goal at any moment of time. And you can always change that goal, but you need to move forward. You can't move forward if you don't know where you're going. And if and it doesn't matter if, let's say that's, because everything builds up on top of everything, right? Let's say that I didn't know what I want to do, and therefore I kind of waste my time around. I do stuff which are not very commitful, and I don't really achieve much because I'm just looking around, not doing much stuff. What that means that if tomorrow I wake up and I'm like, actually, I'd like to be a startup co-founder, I've wasted a lot of time. None of that time has been useful to do anything. Or if I wake up in the day and I say, oh, I'd like to get a mentor, because I haven't done anything very interesting, that means that no mentor is interested in me because they don't see the potential. So it doesn't matter what your goal is, or a lot of people are there like, oh, I don't want to think long term because that goal might change. But that is such a very vicious way of thinking, because don't focus on the fact that it will change. Take one step at a time, focus on one goal, and when you go towards that goal, you will do things which will help you even if you change your goal. So move forward. And a lot of people don't have any goals, and again, they are like, oh, I don't know what to do because it's long term. I don't know where I'll be in 10 years. I don't know what I will want to do in 10 years. Will I still want to do a startup or whatever? Just like think long term and short term at the same time, which is like an interesting balance, right? But yeah, definitely do one thing at a time. Focus on one long term goal at a time. Do focus on something. When you do something, it has to be intentional. It has to be strategic. Definitely be very strategic, because it saves you time. And then there is the other advice, which is if you want to do your own startup, try to understand why you wanted to do it. Because you definitely will have to make a lot of sacrifices, and you have to make sure that the end goal is worth these sacrifices. And there are two reasons for that. One, if you don't understand what sacrifices you're going to make, and if your reason for being a founder is not strong enough, you will give up. And that would be huge wasted time. Not as much as if, because it does teach you a lot, to be a co-founder and stuff like that. But it can be a wasted time compared to if you could have seen that before you started, and pick a goal that would have put you, on long term in a better position to do whatever you want to do. So definitely think twice and really do visualize the sacrifices. What if I told you that you would lose all of your university friends? How would you feel? All of my friends now are friends which I have in the tech world, which I met, randomly afterwards. And now that I have more time, I meet a lot of people who are co-founders as well. But it's a very different vibes. Like I won't, get drunk with those co-founders on a Saturday evening, going to nightclub, because they don't have the time as well. And so if now I wanted to have the time and go to nightclub, I can't really go back to my old friend, which I haven't spoken to for 4 years. So, like, make sure
it requires some sacrifices.
Yeah, and I think people take it quite lightly, but like really do visualize all of your friends from university. You don't speak to any of them anymore. Your world has completely changed and shifted. How would you feel? Would you feel like that's worth it. To me, it is, but to a lot of people, I know that it's not going to be worth it.
Yeah. Great. Very valuable advice. Thank you so much for coming to the show.
Thank you for having me.
It's been an amazing, I mean, we went past the time that I usually do my podcast, but it was all worth it. Thank you so much for sharing your journey and your experiences. It's very, very valuable for the listeners. And your Instagram account is Nathalia.
It's Jägerscode, actually.
Yeah, of course. Sorry, yeah. So for our listeners to go and check it out, and also, of course, check out the Custodian app and website. So yeah, thank you so much for coming. Hopefully, I will meet you in person at some point, and we can.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
When Custodian is a lot bigger and better. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me.